Right now, today, the US government can legally read your emails. Not because you're a terrorist, not because a judge signed a warrant, not because you did anything wrong, just because you emailed the wrong person or texted someone overseas. And this week, Congress just made sure they can keep doing it. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a law. It's called FISA Section 702. And what happened on April 17th, 2026 should have been front page news everywhere. Let me tell you the full story. Okay, let's start simple. You know how the government is supposed to need a warrant to search your house? Like, a judge has to say, yes, we have a good reason to look at this person's stuff. That rule comes from the Fourth Amendment. It's been in the Constitution since 1791. It basically says the government can't just go snooping around without permission from a court. Now here's where things get interesting. In 2008, Congress passed a new law. It was called the FISA Amendments Act, and buried inside it was Section 702. Here's what Section 702 said. We can spy on foreign people outside the United States without getting a warrant for each one. Sounds reasonable, right? We're talking about foreign suspects, terrorists, spies, people overseas who want to hurt us. But here's the catch. Think about this. What happens when a foreign person you're spying on talks to an American? Their emails, their texts, their phone calls, all of it gets collected, including the American on the other end. And the government has a name for this. They call it incidental collection. Incidental, like it's an accident, like it was never the plan. But here's the truth. The NSA, that's the National Security Agency, uses two main tools to collect communications under Section 702. The first is called PRISM. This is where the NSA goes directly to tech companies. Think Google, Apple, Microsoft, and says, give us everything this foreign person has sent or received. The second is called upstream collection. This is even broader. The NSA taps directly into the backbone of the internet, the actual cables and routers that carry your data, and pulls out communications that match certain targets. Now, once all that data is collected, it gets dumped into a massive database. And then the FBI, your domestic law enforcement agency, can search that database. For Americans, without a warrant, they just type in a name, an email address, a phone number, and boom, whatever messages that person sent or received, if it touched a foreign target, is right there. This practice is called a backdoor search. Privacy experts call it a backdoor search because the government couldn't get a warrant for you directly, so they use a side door. Now, here's where the numbers get jaw-dropping. The FBI conducted 3.4 million warrantless backdoor searches of Americans' communications in 2021 alone. Let that number land. 3.4 million. In 2022, a reported figure of 200,000 searches was cited, but that number was later understood to represent searches that were specifically found to be improper, not the total number of searches. Between 2020 and early 2022, the FBI ran more than 278,000 searches that did not meet legal standards. The FISA Court, the secret court that oversees this program, described the violations as persistent and widespread. And who were they searching for? Not just foreign terrorists. The FBI searched for Black Lives Matter protesters, January 6th Capitol participants, 19,000 donors to a congressional campaign, journalists, members of Congress, a senator, and I am not making this up, an FBI agent's family member, because the agent's mother suspected the relative of having an extramarital affair. That last one, an extramarital affair, with a surveillance tool built to fight terrorism. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but didn't they fix this? Great question. Kind of. Here's what actually happened. In April 2024, Congress reauthorized Section 702 through something called the RISA, the Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act. Privacy advocates fought hard for one simple change: require a warrant before searching Americans' data. That amendment failed by one single vote in the House of Representatives. One vote. Your right to privacy from warrantless government search lost by one vote. Now fast forward to April 2026. This week, Section 702 was set to expire on April 20th, 2026. Congress had 2 years to come up with a long-term solution. 2 years to debate, reform, and fix the law. They couldn't do it. Speaker Mike Johnson tried to push through a 5-year extension. No major reforms. Just let everything keep going. That blew up in his face. About 20 conservative Republicans, from the House Freedom Caucus voted it down at midnight. Even members of Trump's own party said they'd had enough. Here's the wild part. Even President Trump pushed for a clean extension, saying, and I'm paraphrasing, he was willing to give up his own privacy rights to keep this program running. This is the same Trump whose 2016 campaign was itself targeted by FISA abuses. The FBI used a disputed dossier to get FISA warrants to monitor Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. Trump lived through the abuse of this exact program, and he still wanted to extend it without changes. So what happened? Congress kicked the can. Again, on April 17th, 2026, the House passed a 10-day extension. The Senate approved it the same day. The new deadline is April 30th, 2026. 10 days. That's it. That's the plan. Kick it 10 more days and hope someone figures it out. Meanwhile, Democrats don't trust the Trump administration with this power. Representative Jason Crow of Colorado put it bluntly, the number of sensitive person inquiries has tripled in the last year. He said, and I quote directly, I want to know why they've tripled. What protections are being put in place so that this administration is not going to weaponize really important intelligence tools against Americans? And there's another terrifying layer to this. The government claims that after 2024 reforms, the number of backdoor searches on Americans dropped to just 5,518 in 2024 and 7,413 in 2025. That sounds like progress, right? But here's the catch. The Brennan Center for Justice, a respected legal watchdog, found that the FBI was using an advanced filter function that ran additional searches on Americans beyond those being tracked and reported. In other words, the real number of searches is unknown. The FBI wasn't even counting all of them. And now there's a new fear. Intelligence agencies are reportedly expanding their use of AI-assisted surveillance tools. The concern? AI could run automated queries on Americans' data at a scale no human could do manually, and potentially bypass the counting requirements entirely. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Section 702 was sold to Congress as a tool to target foreign terrorists. That's it. That was the pitch in 2008. Brett Tolman, a former U.S. attorney who was in the room when Section 702 was being drafted, said, and this is remarkable, that what Section 702 became versus what it was sold as was, in his words, not honest. What started as a foreign surveillance tool has become the largest warrantless domestic surveillance program in American history. And here's something that will stop you cold. A YouGov poll found that 75% of Americans support requiring a warrant before the government searches their messages. 75%. That's not a fringe position. That's the American people clearly, loudly saying, get a warrant before you read our stuff. Congress has ignored that 75% over and over again. Because on the other side of this debate, the intelligence community argues, and they're not entirely wrong, that requiring individual warrants would slow things down. That in a fast-moving terrorist investigation, a warrant takes time. That this program has genuinely helped stop attacks, identify sources of fentanyl, and prevent cyber attacks. That's real. That matters. But here's the question at the heart of all of this. Can we trust the government to have unlimited access to our private communications, with no judge, no warrant, no individual oversight, and never abuse that power? The evidence says no. The FISA Court said the violations were persistent and widespread. The FBI searched 19,000 political donors. They searched journalists. They searched a senator. They used a terrorism tool to investigate a family member's suspected affair. And the government is currently appealing a 2024 federal court ruling that found these backdoor searches unconstitutional. So here's where we are. The clock is ticking. April 30th, 2026 is the new deadline. Congress has 10 days to either A. Extend the program again, with no changes, keeping the backdoor open. B. Add real reforms, starting with a warrant requirement for searching Americans' data. C. Let it expire entirely, which would likely trigger lawsuits from the tech companies being forced to hand over your data. This is not a left issue or a right issue. Look at who's fighting for reform. Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat from Oregon. Senator Mike Lee, a Republican from Utah. Both of them have been saying the same thing for years. This is unconstitutional. Fix it. And here's what I want you to walk away knowing. You are probably in this database. If you've ever emailed someone outside the United States, a friend, a family member, a business contact. Your message may have been collected. And until there's a warrant requirement, any FBI agent can type your name into that system and read it. No judge, no warrant, no probable cause. In 2026, in the United States of America, the Fourth Amendment is 235 years old. It says the government needs a good reason and a judge's approval before it searches your private communications. We should probably keep that rule. Watch this space. April 30th matters. Share this video so people know what's happening, because if nobody talks about it, nothing changes.